Hi, Marco Di Stefano here, and welcome to this new episode of the Virtual Orchestration series. Today I'm showing you the behind the scene of my latest composition, which is called In My Dreams, which is built entirely using Spitfire audio libraries. As usual, you can find the composition on my website, which is www.marcodistefano.art. The composition is the second of a project about scoring two portraits. In this specific case, these portraits are from a friend of mine, Vincenzo Vitale. I got a feedback from many of you who say that would like to hear the full composition at the beginning of the video, so in this case, here it is. The story I want to tell with this music is one of a man which is thinking about a dream that he realized in his life, starting from the past, where he actually had the inception of this dream, going on about with his life, with some dramatic moments where he might have been working on the realization of this dream, and then coming back to the present where this dream is now reality. So it's clearly an happy end. There is a melodic line that you hear all over the composition, which represents actually the dream of this man. And you will see that this melodic line is orchestrated in different ways to represent the past, the present, and the different emotions. For the beginning of the composition and the introduction of the idea, I wanted to create a real dreamy atmosphere. One of the inspirations for this composition was some music from Vivaldi. And luckily, the Spitfire Chamber Evolutions achieved very well to create such kind of textures I wanted to have. So all the MIDI tracks that you see on top, these are all from Spitfire Chamber Evolutions. They are still in the MIDI because at that time they were not yet in my template, but today they are. So they are all loaded into a contact instance. And since I knew the kind of texture I wanted, I'm really using different articulations from the Spitfire Chamber Evolutions. So you can see they are all loaded here, like the Chamber 12, sul tasto pulse, Chamber 15, sudden sul ponte. And to each of these articulations, I am assigning some part of the harmonization, of the harmonic movements, sorry. The skeleton of this composition is actually these harmonic movements. So there are very few chords which go through all the compositions. And now let's look at it. Here it is. So let's give a listen. You can see the difference between the different articulations which are building the chord progression and harmonization. This one I really like. But it's not only about the choice of the articulations here. There is also huge work which I did on the automations to have a nice movement with the modulation and the expression. Not that you need really to do that when using the chamber evolutions, because these are really moving textures, but I find it a bit more realistic to have that. Also because there are some articulations which I wanted to hear to be heard more at a certain moment than another. I think the result is beautiful, then up to you to judge. So what you heard so far, this is the main chord progression. So there are just a few changes then which happen during the composition. And you can see that then there is a moment in which there is not anymore the strings playing, because then it's all played with woodwinds. You will see this later. Now let's listen to the main melodic line. This is initially played with the piano. So we have the triple felt piano from Spitfire Audio. And a piano which I always use actually is the Garritan CFX Grand piano. And on top of this we have also some percussion, the celeste playing. So let's give a listen to what this melodic line is. So mainly you have the piano and the felt piano which are playing in octave, and then you have the celesta which is playing harmonically. One trick I like to use is to have the sustain kept on for a long period. So, like for example, what I'm doing here. And as a result, you have a huge resonance, which helps to create the ambient. So this is almost everything for the first part, except the fact that I'm also using a patch from Hans Zimmer strings. It's probably one of the most used and loved patch so far. It is the 60 violins Collegno Tratto. Here it is. And in my specific case, it is just repeating exactly the same harmonic schema that we have seen with the chamber evolutions. Okay, we don't hear anything at the beginning because I suppose that there is some, okay, right, some modulation expression. It starts very low, but then here, yeah. So we can see that it's actually not adding anything to the harmony and to the chord progression. It's actually just repeating it. So we have now seen all the instruments which are involved in the first part, so let's give a listen to it. So as I said before, I orchestrated the main theme in different ways. First of all, the part that we heard here is inspiring like the very past and the inception of the theme. Now we are going to move into a second phase, which is orchestrated with strings, which is creating a more romantic and melancholic version of the theme. So here I've been using chamber strings, London Contemporary Orchestra strings, and Hans Zimmer. Let's start with the violins one from chamber strings. And to try to create some realistic strings, so of course there are some automations for the expression, modulation, and vibrato. But also I'm using several articulations from the same patch of violins 1. So you can see that the phrase is split between different articulations, being long, long concertino, long sul ponte, and especially the legato portamento, which creates these very nice slides between one note and the other. And then, as I'm showing in all my videos, so there is a recording that I do with my MIDI controllers. Actually, I'm using Lemur to record that with the expression modulation and vibrato. So here, what I'm showing to you, this curve is the vibrato. So you see, for example, the vibrato increases mainly close to long notes, which respects a bit more the reality how these instruments are played. Let's listen now also to the chamber violins too. So you can see that the violins too are harmonically repeating the melodic line. And here again I'm using several articulations from Herrmann is long and portamento. The third violins line is done with the London Contemporary Orchestra with an articulation which I really love. Is the open normale. So this is repeating at the octave the violins 1. But I think it's nice if we listen to the London Contemporary Orchestra alone, which, as I said, is this open normale articulation. So let's give it a listen. Oh, it's wonderful. Now let's see again what's all together. And I don't know how much I want to repeat myself, but really the automation are absolutely important here to make these strings play as much realistic as possible. So really spend some time on this. Then the next patch we are going to see is the 60 violins legato from the Hans Zimmer, which are actually just playing the melody. Again, this is the automation for the expression, modulation and vibrato. And if you want to see which microphone I used, so here there are two, so the outrigger microphone and the gallery microphone, if I'm not wrong, yes. Close to the 60 violins there are also 60 cello in legato playing, again. This is it. What the celli are doing here is actually doubling the violins too, but one octave under. And this is the two together. Another sound that I'm using from the Hans Zimmer strings, it's the 24 bass sul ponte, which is a very strong one, so you will listen to it. It's adding the main bass to the composition. It's actually playing some kind of pedale roll. Okay, so I think it's now interesting to listen to all the strings playing together this theme. And then after this nostalgic moment, we have again the melody given back to the pianos, which actually will introduce the more dramatic moment. The idea of this dramatic moment being the fact that typically we have to fight to reach our dreams, and this is like what's in it. So here it starts with the piano, there is a crescendo and there is also the time which is increasing slowly. And you will listen also that the felt piano is playing always the same 4 notes, which initially are in consonance with the harmonic progression but later becomes more dissonant. Also you can see here that I'm having some brass added here that are from Albion V. So this is not a huge bass, because I wanted to maintain this dreamy atmosphere and I didn't want to have any leading frequency, especially on the bass. And Albion V does this very well. For the final phase, as you can see, all the chamber evolutions will fade out, and we'll leave just the texture to the Hans Zimmer, the Collegno tratto, that will continue to till the end. And now the theme is orchestrated in a completely different way, based on all Woodwinds instruments, so flute, mainly flute, corne anglais, bassoon, horns, some other patches from Herrmann toolkits. So let's listen to it instrument per instrument, starting with this one, which is the flutes from the Spitfire Symphonic Woodwinds. So let's put it in solo. Also in this case, automations, modulation, expression, different articulations, legato, long hollow. The second instrument in the list is from Bernard Herrmann toolkit. It's called concert flutes. It's actually a mix of flutes. I like it very much, this one, so listen to it. Okay, so maybe let's listen to it alone. Okay, here it is. Start again. As you can hear, this is playing at the octave, the same melody of the flute. This is the articulations I'm using. So long, legato, and in the end there is a flatter legato. The next one we are seeing here is from the Spitfire Symphonic Woodwinds, and is the corps anglais. So also this one is playing at the octave, still one octave under the others. I know I'm saying already for the 10th time baby, but yes, that's the modulation and the expression. Very important to make it sounds realistic. Let's listen now to all of them. So where we will also add the last instrument, which is from the Spitfire Symphonic Woodwinds, the bassoon, which is not playing at the octave, but is harmonizing a bit. So here is the lowest line is the bassoon. You see how different the orchestration is now with the woodwinds. It's so much more quiet and at peace. And this is the way I wanted to give the impression that finally this dream is now reality, with this very peaceful moment. And then here is what is missing, so that let's come back. Okay, saving. All right, this is again the flutter articulation. So I'm using some other patches from Bernard Herrmann toolkit here. I'm using two of one, so which is the mixed flutes and the horns, and I'm using the articulations which actually plays chords. So let's look first at the mixed flutes. What does it look like? So, and I'm changing articulation from minor to major articulations. And then I'm also using a second patch from Bernard Herrmann toolkit with the chords, and this is this one, the horns. So it's the same story here. I'm just using the articulation for the minor and major chords. And that's all for the woodwinds part. Then maybe what's to add here is that in the end you will hear that there is the chamber evolutions which come back just for a very small time in the end. So okay, we were skipping the chamber evolutions. Here they are. This is like bringing back the dream with the initial texture. And that's all for the composition in itself. I would like to show you now the tempo track, because as I said in all my videos, I never use a linear tempo. I try to make something which sounds realistic. And in this case, so you can see that there is a huge work done here. So there is the moment of the crescendo that you can easily see, and where is actually there is the dramatic moment. So the time goes from 70 BPM to almost 125, and then goes down again. And then for the final part, which is the Woodwinds part, you can see that I'm playing it quite with a lower tempo than the beginning, because at the beginning you see we have about 70, and in the end we are in average at let's say 50. Because again, I wanted to present the melody with a completely different aspect, more relaxed in peace. The way I've created this tempo here is by tapping the tempo. So meaning that actually I'm recording and tapping notes, having in mind the song, and then merging this tapping with the real tempo. And that's a fantastic function that actually you should discover. If you have never seen that, you should be able to find this into the MIDI menu here. So you go in functions, merge tempo from tapping. There are a lot of tutorials that you can find on the web on how to use this, so I really encourage you from using it. Last thing is the mixer. So this is my template, which I think you might have seen in all the other videos. And here, so I'm using in the groups, I'm having some FX for the reverb. Voila, this is one. So where first of all I'm cutting out some bass and high frequency from the reverb, and then I'm using as a reverb the Reverence LA Studio from Cubase Pro version, which is actually now the one that I'm always using in this configuration. Also for the old piano I'm having some stereo delay and some other reverb, because I wanted to have a bit more reverb on these instruments. For the mixing and mastering I'm using Ozone 8, and then for the mixing I have Neutron 2 loaded for certain instruments. For example, for the piano here I'm mainly cutting out all the high frequencies, as you can see here. And then for example another one, let's look at where is the chamber evolutions. Okay, here it is. So this is the EQ which I have here, just boosting a bit the bass and the high, and reducing a bit the mid frequencies. And then for the final mastering I'm using Ozone 8, where I am using just EQ, a bit of compressor and the maximizer. So this is my EQ. For the compressor I'm using a threshold which is put at minus 14.4 decibel here, which is just good enough, so is never surpassed that much, and allows me to even have an increase in the overall gain, which is as you can see is a 5 decibel of gain increase. And finally we have a maximizer, which is pushing everything to a ceiling of minus 1 decibel. So that's all for this video. I hope that you find the composition interesting and that you could see or maybe learn something from it. If you didn't subscribe yet to my channel, so don't hesitate to do that. You will be notified of all my next compositions and videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.